Hello. Today, I'm going to present to you my physical evidence that there is telepathy. And if one person can do it, anybody can do it. And I've had it done, right? I've done it. And probably many of you watching have done it. And I'm even going to describe telepathy, at least like how you can tell that's what's going on. And I just want to point out first that, the system is busy telling us that there's no evidence for telepathy. And by the system, I'm talking about, television, government, the education system, um, et cetera, right? Scientists. And that's not even true, that all scientists think that there's no such thing as telepathy. Yeah, no. There's a large portion of the scientific community that knows about this stuff. And the people who say that there's no evidence that there's telepathy, to them, I would say, yeah, then how come there's a whole bunch of evidence? They've done all kinds of double blind studies on things like remote viewing. So the cat has been out of the bag for a long time. This isn't news to any of you guys watching, but I just wanted to put that out there for the haters that there's lots of scientific evidence, guys. Lots of double-blind studies have been done, control groups, and I've got this here, and I'm going to tell you this story about my friend who has crazy intense telepathic abilities. And you can too. You can cultivate them if you want. I'll even recommend a book to you. Um, and then I'm going to kind of wrap some things up with Little Kurt. Kind of the gap in time between when I was 4 and I had the visitations from physical angels and the out-of-body experience, right? When I was about 4. And I posted those videos last week if you want to go check them out on my YouTube channel here. So the gap in time between that and this story about telepathy, I'm going to kind of describe what was going on in that gap in time. Also, a quick bit of housekeeping. If you'd like to join me over here on this platform, there's this video platform right here. It's a lot like YouTube. It's, free video content. Go find me over there. Same name, New World All-Star. All-Star is one word, ALLSTAR. And, check it out. See if you're interested in helping me construct a new Earth community where we can all live in peace and prosperity. I'm looking for my soul tribe to do something in the 3D. So that's my project over there on that platform. So let's get to this story here. This video series, by the way, the 2 videos that I posted last week, this video right here, this is a video series about interesting spiritual experiences that I've had. And of course, last week I spoke to the 2 experiences I had when I was 4, when I was visited by physical angels and I had an out-of-body experience. And I was 4. So this was when I was 19. Let me tell you about my friend first. And again, after I tell you this story about my physical evidence that there is telepathy, after I'm done, I'm going to tell you about what happened between the age of 4 and 19. Just quickly about that, because there weren't very many like individual mind-blowing spiritual experiences like this story, for example, or the 2 stories I told last week. But there is kind of a bigger spiritual energy in my life. So I'll share that with you as well in this video. what happened between the age of 4 and 19. So when I was 19 began what I would call my miniature spiritual awakening, not a forced spiritual awakening, like when you meet your twin flame, for example, but I chose to do it. I always felt this pull, this calling, which is what I'm going to talk about a little bit later in this video. And I just decided to start meditating and this type of thing. And this letter that I'm going to explain to you first here was kind of the way to kick off that part in my life, that time in my life when I had embraced spirituality at the age of 19. So let me tell you about my friend first, who wrote me this letter. Just to provide you some context, he had maybe 9 months prior to this letter, his own forced spiritual awakening experience. We're still friends to this day. We're like brothers. And I've mentioned him before a few times on this YouTube channel. His forced spiritual awakening was triggered, if that's the right word, initiated in the kind of way that somebody's forced spiritual awakening is usually initiated. So whereas somebody who met their twin flame, that's not by the numbers what usually happens. I don't know exactly what the numbers are, but it's probably in the single digits. Out of everybody who's had a forced spiritual awakening, it's probably in the single digits percentage-wise, people whose forced spiritual awakening was initiated, triggered, started by the meeting of another incarnation of your soul, or what people call twin flame. Everybody else whose forced spiritual awakening is initiated, it's initiated usually by some kind of life circumstances. So, a terminal illness, a death in the family, just your life situation falling apart. Eckhart Tolle, he already had anxiety and things were going wrong in his life situation. And that's what triggered his forced spiritual awakening. And he describes his forced spiritual awakening in the opening pages of The Power of Now. They call it ego death or dark night of the soul, same thing. And ego death is a term that's been around for a long time, hundreds if not thousands of years. And this is what happened to my friend. So it started with he got a DUI, and it was his second, I think, or maybe third. Yeah. He doesn't drive anymore, and he doesn't drink that much anymore either. He's learned his lesson, but this was 25 years ago, 25 years ago when this happened. And I was about 19 or 20. We were living together. We were roommates. And this was when I was 19. He got the DUI, and that really sucks. They make it a big pain in the ass. They make it really inconvenient for you. It's insanely expensive to pay for everything. And so he was dealing with that. And then he got a blood clot. So he got the DUI. The judge put him on a drug called antabuse. And antabuse makes it so that if you drink alcohol, you get really sick. So you just, you don't drink. That's controversial. I'm not sure if they still do that here in Colorado, but that's what happened. And they make you take it too. You have to report to the probation officer or whatever. And they watch you swallow it and everything, right? And then he gets a blood clot in his leg. And it was a big one, man. It went all the way from his ankle almost all the way up to his torso. And he still is dealing with that to this day. He hasn't fully recovered, although over the last year or two, he's been using basically like manifesting techniques to try to get it to heal, and it's working. The leg is finally getting better. So that's something I've been kind of helping him with. Well, anyway, so he's taken the antabuse, and now he's got to take blood thinners. He was in the hospital. He almost died and everything. It's a blood clot, dude. It's very serious, a blood clot, and especially a big one like that. And I don't know what precipitated the mental and emotional breakdown that he had. It could have just been the situation. I don't know if it was the antabuse and the blood thinners and the situation all combined and everything. You know, maybe that's what precipitated it, but he went into a mental and emotional tailspin. So the next thing that he did was he went to the doctor to get, a prescription for that, some kind of antidepressant. I don't remember which one it was. He started taking that, and it seemed to make things worse. So he goes to another doctor and gets another prescription, and he doesn't tell the second doctor that he's already taking one. He just starts taking the second one, which you're not supposed to do. And so now he's taking antabuse, blood thinners, and 2 different antidepressants. He's doing everything wrong, and things just keep getting worse and worse and worse. And his mom came to live with us in the apartment, which that was awkward. But she wanted to keep an eye on him, and he was a mess. Those of you who have gone through something like this, and I know there's a lot of you on this channel who have gone through something like this with your twin flame, it was like that for him, only it was started by something else. It was initiated, it was triggered by these life events. But he had this, with the exception of the obsessive thinking, perhaps. The obsessive thinking seems to be unique to twin flames, but just the general depression and anxiety and feeling out of sorts and being out of control and the sleepless nights and being thrown into an absolute tailspin. And your whole mental and emotional state is one big tornado, and it just comes on all of a sudden out of nowhere. You are all of a sudden, you are this gigantic mental and emotional train wreck. Whereas before, he's always been like laughing and joking around all the time and always making light of things. And whenever somebody would like test him out at work, you know how people are always trying to push your buttons, he was strong. He's very much, I think, what you would call like an alpha male. And but at the same time, really great sense of humor and funny and fun, but doesn't take any shit. He's tough. And to see him in this state was very strange. He was a disaster. And it got so bad that he couldn't function at all. He couldn't work. He had to go on like permanent sick leave. And he ended up in a monitoring facility where they make sure you're not going to harm yourself. So his doctor made him, it was not by choice. His doctor made him go to this place where they don't let you leave for a certain amount of time and until you are stabilized. And, there's people in this facility that are legit, like, woohoo, right? And he was just going through a turn, I think you could say. But still going nuts. Um, and he even tried to slash his wrists in the shower one day while he was at the monitoring facility. I'm putting it nicely, right? It's a monitoring facility. They keep an eye on you to make sure you're not going to hurt yourself. And of course, when he was in the shower one day, he was in such a bad way, he took his glasses off and broke them so that he could slash his wrists. And that was kind of the turning point for him. And he finally, it was like he took a step back, and he scared himself with that. He said to himself, whoa, I got to do something about this. And that's when he finally started like cooperating with the people there at this facility, and they got him cleaned up off the drugs that he was taking. So I believe they appealed to the judge to get him taken off the antabuse because they think that might have triggered some of this or something. He had to stay on the blood thinners, of course, but the other 2 prescriptions, they took him off slowly. They slowly taper you off. He was in there for like 3 months. And I remember going there to visit him with some friends too. So he came out more stable when they released him. He was stable enough to go home. And he went home. And he just kind of went into a deep... So for those of you that have had this ego death experience, and again, there's probably a lot of you watching who have, if you've met your twin flame. Do you remember right as you came out of the dark night of the soul? And I remember this. I remember the day. I remember I was at a lake, and I took a picture of the lake too. I still have that picture. And I remember that day when I felt this peaceful presence finally enter me, even though it was already there, right? But it felt like that, like everything's going to be all right. And I felt this pull to go deeply in here. And that's the best way I can describe it. But you know what I mean. While at the same time, there's still the heaviness of the dark night of the soul, the ego death. It really like kind of tapers off, fades away over the course of many weeks when it finally stops, the dark night of the soul. And I saw him go through that kind of transition. Well, anyway, within a year, this came along. Because what started happening when he started to transition into the actual awakening part of his journey out of the dark night of the soul is he started to hear things in his head, and he would get all of this information all the time about the future and about other people, and he could hear exactly what people were thinking. And it was so bad, he went and talked to a... Wait, am I thinking of somebody else? Maybe I'm thinking of somebody else. I was going to say he went and talked to a therapist, and they said, you're crazy, but I don't... Maybe that was some... I might be thinking of somebody else, but it suffice to say he knew exactly what it was. And it was... Here's what I'm trying to tell you about his telepathy. He's so gifted. His telepathy is so strong that it started to like be a nuisance. Like he couldn't turn it off. He would be at work and he couldn't concentrate on his job because it was like a constant thought stream from the person working across the table from him. And they weren't even talking or anything, but he could hear everything that they were thinking, and it was distracting. It was like having a television with the volume turned all the way up inside your head. And there was no way to like turn it off. He was like, God, it's really distracting. I can't. And it was just all day. He'd walk up to somebody just to talk to them, ask them a question. It could be a customer at the place he worked at. He worked in a grocery store. And he'd, walk up to them and ask them, are you finding everything okay? And it was hard for him to concentrate on what they were saying because it was so loud in his head. He'd hear everything the person was saying, was thinking in their head. And I've never personally known anybody up to that point in my life who had this intense of telepathy. So he had to learn how to kind of like turn it down. He started reading The Power of Now. He's actually the person who introduced me to The Power of Now, actually. I was 19, and he told me about that book. And I remember he described it as a filing cabinet for your mind. That was his way of describing it. Yeah, he goes, it's like a filing cabinet for your mind. And I read it. And he was able to not really control the telepathy, but like not focus on it as intensely. I don't remember where he heard about that book from. Maybe he likes to hang out in Boulder, and I kind of do too. Boulder, Colorado. It's like it's like a spiritual town. There's a lot of spiritually minded people living there, and a lot of yuppies too, unfortunately. But it's like yuppies and hippies living there, and they're driving all the hippies out. But there's the energy field in Boulder. You go to that town and you can feel it. It's a very intense piece. And I think it's the Flatirons. There's the old mountains in Boulder. So we have the Colorado Rocky Mountains, and Boulder is nestled right at the feet of the Colorado Rocky Mountains. Well, in one of the big mountains, which overlooks Boulder, you can see what's called the Flatirons. And the Flatirons are the prehistoric ancient mountains, which when the new mountains, which are the current Rocky Mountains, started to take shape from the tectonic plates, the new mountains in certain parts turned up the old prehistoric mountains, like literally like the old prehistoric mountains are here, and it like turned them upside down, and they're like sticking out of the new mountains that formed, which are the current Colorado Rocky Mountains. But there were mountains before the Colorado Rocky Mountains, like hundreds of millions of years ago, if not a couple of billion years ago. I think a couple of billion years ago. And then those mountains kind of eroded and deteriorated, and then the new mountains started to form. And when the new mountains started to form, it turned up the Flatirons, the prehistoric mountains, like some of the remnants. And you can see them like literally jutting out of the mountain overlooking Boulder. And I think that's what it is. I think that's what it is. I think that's what's up with the energy field in Boulder. So I don't know, maybe he saw that book at a bookstore or something. So fast forward a year, and I am interested in this stuff. I haven't quite embraced it fully yet. One night, I think I was 20. I had a friend, a lady friend, who we liked to party, let's just say. I was 20, and I liked to do certain things, like many 20-somethings do, that you're not supposed to do. And so we did that at her house. And he described like the car ride there, like what I was doing in the car. Like we went for a car ride. We went and drove around, and he describes in this letter, he did not like her because of the things that we were doing. But he describes in this letter exactly like what songs that I was listening to on the radio. And then when we got to her house and started doing those things and hanging out at her house, specific sentences that I said, and we were miles away. Like he had no idea where I was at all, or what we were doing or saying, or where we drove, or anything. And I mean, he wrote down specific sentences that I said, specific sentences that she said. It's just astonishing, and it's a whole page. It's a whole entire. I'm not going to show it to you, but it's from here all the way to here with his handwriting. Yeah, you're pretty rad. This is the best time I've ever had. And then she said, yeah, let's do this again, maybe at the rave concert. I remember her saying that. Yeah, I listened to Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. I listened to People Are People by Depeche Mode. I listened to Sail Away. Come sail away, da 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 da. Right, that song. Yeah, like how, wow. Yeah, I used to work at a record store called Disc Jockey at the time, and it said, I don't want to become a manager there, and I don't want 2 jobs, fuck that. I don't want to work in banking anymore, because I had 2 jobs. I was a bank teller. Oh yeah, she gave me something, and I said, do you want some money for this? And she said no. I mean, just... Now, when I got home in the morning, I crashed on her couch. When I got home in the morning, this was laying at the doorway to my room in our apartment. So we had a 2-bedroom apartment. It was laying in the threshold of the door to the room in my apartment. I still have, this is over 25 years ago. I still have it. There was another time about 4 months later when I was playing on the piano in my room, and I was doing some weird experimental music theory thing. I was kind of playing with music theory. And I'm going to have to, by the way, I'm going to have to, I think, I'm probably going to run out of time. So the part about the time gap between when I was 4 and this period in my life, I'll have to do that in another video. But anyway, yeah, I was doing some experimental thing that I called mirror playing, which was kind of a BS music theory thing that I made up. But I was just kind of playing around on the piano, and I was experimenting with music theory. And I didn't write it down. I didn't say it aloud. I just thought about it. And a couple of days later, I was being nosy, and I was in his room, and he has a journal on his dresser, and I opened it up, and I was looking at, you're not supposed to do this. It's disrespectful, but I did it. This is what I did. I was 19 or 20. I was kind of a little shithead sometimes. But anyway, I'm still glad that I did this, because I looked, I guess it was meant to be, because I looked in there and he wrote down mirror playing. He wrote down the things that I was thinking about too when I was sitting down that night. I told him that I snooped, and he forgave me for that, but really, really strange. Not really strange. after all, there were a couple of times where I heard thoughts from him too. And he would be across town, and I asked him about it later, and he was like, yeah, I did have that thought. And I remembered the exact time that it happened too. And it's interesting, telepathy, when it comes through, you hear it like audio in your third eye, or you see it like a movie playing in your third eye, and it's not your thought. And the couple of experiences that I had, it was like the crackling of a radio. Like, I remember one of the thoughts that I heard of his was, what is he thinking? Or no. It was, what does he think he's doing? Because he didn't like some chick that I was dating or something. And yeah, pretty interesting. And it was like the crackling over a radio. Like, it was very intrusive, and it was not my thought. And that's the thing that I was going to tell you about telepathy is the intuition is not telepathy. Intuition is spiritual. It's from the soul. Telepathy is mental, right? Remember, body, mind, soul, those are different things. Intuition is a knowing. It's like when you hear that thought in your third eye, well, how do you know it's not your thought? Right. The key word is know. How do you know? Right. Knowing. You just know. You just can tell. It's like a guidance system. Intuition. You're like, wait, that wasn't my thought. And, maybe like a naysayer, like a psychologist or something, they'd be like, well, how do you know that? I don't know. I just know. Yeah, it's intuition. And that's kind of how you can tell the difference. Before we run out of time, I was also going to share with you a book that you can read if you would care to develop your psychic abilities. It's called Developing Your Psychic Abilities. I started to use it, and it started to work, and then I kind of fell off the bandwagon. I could get back into it, I guess. But it's actually not that hard. It really isn't. It's called Developing Your Psychic Abilities, and the author's name is April J. Douglas. And it's April with a Y, Apryl. Developing Your Psychic Abilities by April with a Y, April J. Douglas. You can find it on Amazon. It was a really good, it worked. It worked. I did experience some telepathic hits when I was practicing that, but you gotta stick to it. It's like exercising or working out or learning a foreign language or something. You got to stick with it. Don't be curt and fall off the bandwagon. Don't do what I did, right? So there you go. There's a very interesting story about telepathy, physical evidence of telepathy. More to come, you guys. Have a wonderful week. Thank you for watching. See you next time.